Alright, so there are some guys out there that are sitting on the couch right now because they're waiting for a roster spot. I don't know, a lot of these guys on this list that we're about to talk about, I don't know how they're not on some teams right now. Yes, age is a thing, performance, drop off, all that, but you can't tell me that majority of these guys that we're about to talk about, these free agents that are sitting at home right now, you can't tell me that they don't deserve a roster spot somewhere in the NFL. Some of these guys could be potential contributors to Super Bowl winning teams, or others could just be veterans that help out rookies and younger players on struggling or developing teams. But there's a group of guys that we're going to talk about here that are sitting at home and waiting for a contract. First up, we have Xavien Howard, the cornerback, previously of the Miami Dolphins. And my first reaction to seeing him in particular was, how's this guy not gotten a contract? I do remember there being a little bit of talk. I think he's maybe asking for too much, so that could have something to do with it for a lot of these guys. But, obviously last year or two hasn't been as good as he once was. Cornerbacks tend to not age quite well as soon as they lose their physicality, their speed, their quickness. They drop off a bit, but Xavien Howard has still got to be a serviceable enough cornerback who can defend a receiver for someone in the NFL. So I don't know why he's not on a team. Someone should be picking him up this year. Next up is a guy that I think everyone saw coming, Michael Thomas. Now a team could definitely use this guy, probably in their medical room to study, because he won't be on the field. He'll play about 3 games. That is the thing, unfortunately, for Michael Thomas. Once a superior receiver in this league, one of the big dogs, one of the top receivers leading in a lot of stats, has fallen away massively due to injury. He seemingly just doesn't have any body part that's good anymore and can't stay on the field. Fair enough, teams haven't grabbed him or snapped him up. Michael Thomas still sitting on the couch. Next we have a former Cardinal, Mr. DJ Humphries. Left tackle, been ultra consistent, played at the Cardinals his whole career. Still a free agent now, and I think there's got to be a team out there that can do with someone of his ilk. Not the best tackle going around, but also not the worst. He's just that definition of consistent, middle of the road, can do a job. He can protect your quarterback to a decent enough level. So I think he's not that old. He can find a home somewhere as maybe that veteran presence, as I mentioned earlier, developing a younger bloke, a rookie or a guy in year 2. DJ Humphries, someone's got to snap him up. Now we have another offensive tackle, and it's David Bakhtiari. This guy, different to DJ Humphries though, much better player I'd say overall, but again, it's the injury thing for him. Once in his heyday, one of the best tackles going around, but now has just endured so many injuries that he's obviously lost his spot on Green Bay. He was there for ages and now is without a team. But if it weren't for those insane injuries, he'd be still playing and still starting. The great Ryan Tannehill. This guy could be Joe Flacco 2.0. And the reason I say that is because obviously Joe Flacco, nearing on 40 now, is just that quarterback these days that just rocks up at any team, middle of the road type team. Cleveland last year, wins comeback player of the year. And now this season with the Colts, obviously Anthony Richardson been down for 1 or 2 games, lights it up. Ryan Tannehill could be that. He's 35, 36 years old. He's without a team, obviously been with the Titans for a number of years. I don't know why the Dolphins didn't bring him back. Bit of a renaissance there. Because obviously Tua going down with the whole head injury. Skylar Thompson's just no good. Tyler Huntley hasn't really proven much so far. Ryan Tannehill could be that veteran guy that just comes in to a team and you're like, how's he ended up here? But he just lights it up. Now, given he's not probably that good, but he's still deserving of a spot on a roster. I guess the question here is, does he really want to continue playing? Because he is getting older, and maybe he's making the decision eventually to retire. I don't know. Alright, we've got a couple of washed cornerbacks. The first one, Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson, ex-Cardinal as well. Been a bumpy road. Lots of talk. Not as much production in the last few years. Obviously played with the Vikings and the Steelers in the most recent years. And I think it's just, the time's up for him. I think this is one of the guys that, fair enough, teams are probably overlooking for a good reason because he's past his best. He's had his prime and he was awesome. But I think the time is over for Patrick Peterson. And the second one, I think just absolutely stay away from, in my opinion. Marcus Peters, another serviceable guy in his day, but That season last year with the Raiders, he was hopeless. He was horrible. So as I said, you know, cornerbacks, they tend to get to a certain age, a lot of them. Stephon Gilmore though, exception to the rule. Marcus Peters, Patrick Peterson, these guys, they're too old now. They're not at the level of these receivers in the league anymore. Now this name was another sort of surprise to me. Hunter Renfrow. While not the most flashy guy going around, there's obviously the meme with him next to DK Metcalf and these two players being receivers in the league. It's crazy. However, once upon a time, this was a Pro Bowl level receiver. He's solid and serviceable enough to be a guy that can catch a ball on somebody's team. Seriously. This next receiver, however, diabolical how he's not on a team. This is a top 3 receiver in the league. Chase Claypool. Why does no one have him? Safety Micah Hyde was probably almost the biggest surprise to me when I saw this list of players that are free agents currently, because this is a guy who I just assumed was on a team. I obviously knew him and Jordan Poyer, the safety duo previously for the Buffalo Bills. I obviously knew they were both going their separate ways. Poyer ending up on the Dolphins, but I just assumed Micah Hyde ended up somewhere. But apparently he's a free agent, and you know, this is a guy that can absolutely do a job. He's a very, very solid veteran, and whether or not you want him as a starter or, as I said, a veteran presence that can, you know, educate and develop a younger safety, I reckon even maybe bring him back to Buffalo. It pains me to say, because this is a legend of the game, one of the best receivers of our generation, Julio Jones. Let's just move on. Let's just give it up. Let's do a Larry Fitzgerald and just don't even announce retirement. Just drift off into the sunset. No need to add to your stats because it's bringing down the averages. Julio Jones, just retire. Don't even need to tell anyone. Just move on. Now Melvin Ingram, another name that you probably recognize. In his heyday, solid player. Had a bit of a renaissance with the Dolphins recently in 2022 with 6 sacks, but it's probably getting to that stage of his career where he's going to have to move on. He's not going to really get much production these days. You know, you've got guys like Kyle Van Noy, who I've talked about in a previous video, who is aging like fine wine. Justin Houston, who is also another free agent who's had his stints and popped up nicely, but I think Melvin Ingram it's past it now for him. And the final player who I wanted to mention as a free agent is CJ Uzomah, because I just remember his one sort of, if you want to call it breakout year, I don't know what to call it, but his one nice year with Cincinnati where he caught a few touchdowns, made a few splashes here and there, and then he got traded to the Jets and didn't really do a whole lot, and now he's a free agent. This guy's obviously more of a blocking tight end, but can catch the ball and can make plays. I'm surprised to see him as a free agent. But that is the list of players that I went with in terms of free agents out there. There are obviously more as well, so if there are certain names that I didn't mention that you think are deserving of a roster spot, for whatever reason, let me know in the comments below. And what's the player on this list that you would love to see on your team the most? If you did like this video, remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.